I'm one of the few actors in the business really who didn't go to drama school. I didn't train. It was the only thing I've ever wanted to do or been any good at. But I didn't really come into acting until I was quite old. I was almost 30 before I really started to do the thing I'd really thought I was born to do. Before then, I was just doing menial jobs, working in washing dishes, working in bookshops, doing anything I could. And it was really only when I was 34, many years ago, that I did my first one-man show, did it on the Edinburgh Fringe, which was a show about Kenneth Williams. Yes. Oh, yes, marvellous it was. And that launched me on the world. And that show really began my career. And if I hadn't done that show, I would not be here, sitting here at this lovely convention today, because it was through that show that I met many, many people, including the Big Finish people, and including actually Mark Gatiss and with Shear Smith, who I met in Edinburgh in '96, when they were, like me, just starting out, before they were famous. And we've been friends ever since. So that, I think, was doing. If I hadn't done that show when I was 34, I can't imagine what would have happened to me, and I certainly wouldn't be an actor. I don't think so. I had to do it my own way. This is my advice to anyone watching this who fancies getting into acting. You can go to drama school and pay a huge amount of money to be taught, well, I don't know what they teach them at drama school, or you can do it yourself. I think the best way to learn is to learn by doing, through experience. So if you want to be an actor, just get in there, find any opportunity you can to perform or to create your own work and do it, because the rewards, not necessarily financial, but in other ways, are potentially huge. Well, my first stage show that I did by myself was called Think No Evil of Us, My Life with Kenneth Williams. And it's about Kenneth. This was in '96, by the way, which was 8 years after he died. And I wanted to do that show in a different way, so I wasn't just talking about Kenneth or playing him, but also playing myself and talking about my fascination with him and about other things that happened in my childhood that made me into the kind of child, I suppose, who instead of playing with other children, tended to lock himself away in his bedroom doing funny voices.
Oh, hello. I'm sorry? Oh, no, please don't ask me. I don't like doing it. Oh, no, I couldn't just do it like that here in the street. Oh, no. Well, all right, since it's you. No, stop messing about. No, please, don't. I don't like doing it. No, please, don't ask me.
And then I did a show. I did lots of other shows. After I had a hit with a show about Kenneth, people, I think, expected that I would continue working through all the dead camp comedians, Larry Grayson, Charlie Hawtrey, all the rest, and I resisted that. So I've tried to vary the work that I do. I did do a show about Frankie Howard in 2001, but I've done shows my second show was about Princess Diana's death and funeral. I've done shows on ghost stories, Noel Coward songs, and conspiracy theories. I did a show about all sorts of things. The Lockerbie bombing, the last show I wrote, was something totally different from all the camp frivolity. It was a show about the terrible tragedy, the Lockerbie bombing in 1988. So I did a show about that, a political show. And I like to vary what I do, which possibly means that I'm not easily castable, because casting directors like to use people who they know. They say, well, he's a sort of Kenneth Williams kind of actor, we'll use him. But I like to vary what I do, which means that maybe that's why you don't see me on television very much, until now. Yes, I grew up watching Doctor Who from, I was born in 1962, so when it first came into my consciousness, this Doctor Who, I suppose it was about 64, 65, that's when I really remember watching Doctor Who. It was in the Patrick Troughton black and white era. Tomb of the Cybermen, I remember vividly, frightened the life out of me, Tomb of the Cybermen, when they started hatching out. And I couldn't believe it when I saw it again, when it was found, they just rediscovered it. I watched it, I thought, I remember almost every frame of this so vividly, and there it was, like a dream. from childhood that you remember that actually you could see again. It was quite... Well, there were many episodes that I remembered, but to me it was a very emotional thing. Patrick Troughton was like my dad. My dad is a doctor, GP. So, he was the doctor. My dad is still the cleverest man I've ever met. He knows everything. And as far as I was concerned, Patrick Troughton was a kind of mirror of my father. He was this incredibly wise, compassionate, comforting figure. Yes, I know, exactly. And he was... so watching Doctor Who was very personal, and I don't think I've ever got over his regeneration into John Pertwee. I was devastated as a child. I couldn't believe we were not going to see lovely Patrick Troughton anymore, because he was Doctor Who as far as I've always considered every Doctor Who who's come after Patrick Troughton to be an imposter, and I've never believed any of them, even Tom Baker. I'm sorry I haven't. But I loved Patrick Troughton, and that was the era that I grew up in, and it was unmissable. We all watched it religiously and talked about it the following week at school, and lived for Doctor Who, really. I was absolutely amazed to get the job playing Panda in Iris Wildthyme, and I still don't quite know how that came about. Someone remembered me from my Kenneth Williams show, and they needed someone to play this character. It was plonked down in front of me, this script, and I read it and immediately thought, this is so like me. There's a side of me, it's a lot like my grandfather, the Panda character. And I felt absolutely, when I got into the skin, as it were, of the character, I felt it was my own skin, because I felt very close to Panda, and I still do. And I miss him. I don't know why we don't see so much of Panda anymore, but I loved it. And of course the great thing about playing it was being Katie Manning's companion. This was 2005, I think we did the first one, and we've done many since. But of course I remembered Katie from childhood television, from Doctor Who, and a show called Serendipity, which was for girls really. My sister watched it, I didn't. But there she was, Katie, and she's now a great friend, and we've done work together. She's been a tremendous support to me during times when it's been hard to keep going. Anyone who's in the acting profession will tell you that although the public sees when you've got a job, and they, especially if it's a good job and it does well, and it looks like you're in that position all the time, but in fact you're not. Most of the time you're struggling, you're not working, and you're living in hope that some job will come up that will save the bacon for another year or another month or whatever. So it's a very insecure profession to go into, and I was very glad to have that job with Katie, who really understands what actors go through and how hard it can be sometimes to continue against not only the difficulties of finding work, but your own self-doubt and your feelings of I'm not good enough and everybody else is doing well and I'm not. All that stuff goes through your head constantly, and Katie really understands that and is a great support to me at times when I've really been struggling. So I love her dear. Yeah, Robots of Sherwood was one of those ones, that was really the last television I did. It was, came up through an audition, and I was amazed to find that Mark Gatiss, who as I say, I've known for many years, had written it. And I don't think he put me up for it or anything, but I was cast in it. And it was a lovely part because if you remember, the Herald announces the archery contest. In the contest for the golden arrow, or something like that. So I had to use my stage voice, which I actually prefer, to project. And I could hear my voice hitting back from the walls of this castle. Was it Carnarvon or somewhere, or Caerphilly Castle? And I was doing that all day, just booming out these lines. All right, can we just do it again, please? Yeah, okay. In the contest. Oh my God, it's like 43 times I've done that now. But the thing was, I found, what I thought extraordinary was that I couldn't hear the other actors. Partly because of the distance, they were some distance away from me. But they were walking along, speaking to each other in television voices. In other words, not booming it out like I tend to do, projecting. So I had to say to one of the floor managers, could you just go like that when it's my turn to speak? Because I can't hear anything they're saying. And so I would just be keeping my eye down, see something like that, in the gun. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to do it because I literally couldn't hear the actors at all. So that was a bit strange when I'm used to working on stage and you can hopefully hear everybody loud and clear. This was television acting, rather different. The other thing, can I just tell you one story? On the day of filming, I got back from lunch rather earlier than everybody else. And all the crew and the director were standing around thinking, oh, come on, you know. And I said, well, I'm here. And the director came over and said, would you like to do your scene, your death scene? And I thought, yeah. I said, well, I've got nothing else to do. Let's do it. Let's get it in the can, boys. So come on. And we got up onto this wooden stage they built for the Herald. And I had to pretend that this medieval knight or guard his visor would come up and these laser eyes would kill me. So I had to sort of go and die. So I did this dying fall onto the ground and I fell back onto the stage. Banged my head quite hard, but it was a wooden hollow stage, so it sounded worse than it was. And they said, we need to do another one. Are you all right? Do you want to do another one? I said, no, I'm fine. Let's do another, boy. Let's do one more. We got it in, and I did this lovely and hit the floor. And everybody was coming up to me afterwards saying, that was amazing. We were all watching on the little screen the way you did that. That is going to be the best thing in the show. Well done. Of course, I watched the show, and it was all cut. You see me going, because the monsters hit me, but you didn't see my beautiful dying fall. And it was rather like my film experience a couple of years ago when I was very lucky to pass an audition and get into the film Blade Runner 2049, playing a hologram of Liberace. Yes, a hologram of Liberace. And I did it, and they filmed this amazing sequence with an incredible Liberace costume and me doing a big entrance on stage, and it was wonderful. I went to see the film, it was all cut. And I did think to myself, well, this is why I do one-man shows on my own, because at least you have control over what part of your work gets seen and what doesn't. When you work for film and television, you really have no idea what they're going to use, whether you're going to end up on the cutting room floor, and your best work is never going to be seen. So I'd rather work, I think, much as I love doing telly and film, I like doing shows on my own, on a small stage in a small auditorium, with an intimate audience where we can really connect and express and experience something together that is unique and that I get to say what the audience sees and what they don't. Well, at the moment, the next thing I'm doing is actually, apart from some performances of the show I've been touring with for the last couple of years and will be touring with again, Dad's Army radio show. That's me and my pal Jack Lane doing the radio version of Dad's Army on stage with just the two of us and sound effects, playing all the characters, and it works very well. And we'll be out on stage doing that on tour later this year and next year, actually in perpetuity. I'm hoping the tour might go on even as long as Dad's Army itself, if we're lucky. But the next thing I'm going to be doing is I've been asked to step in to play. I'm going to be the new Prime Minister. I am. That's my new job. I'm going to be the new Prime Minister in a play called Brexit, a comedy, which has been revived. It was on last year with Tim Bentig playing the Prime Minister, and he has resigned, so now I'm going to be taking over. So I've got a whole play to learn in the next month, and that's got the King's Head in June, King's Head in Islington in June, and then I'm going to Edinburgh to do my first new show since 2010. The last new show I wrote was about the Lockerbie bombing, a very serious show about that terrible atrocity. This show is a bit different. It's nothing to do with any dead camp comedians like Kenneth or Frankie. This is a show about what was going on politically in this country 200 years ago. So after the Peterloo massacre in 1820, and the show is called Cato Street 1820. And maybe you might want to Google Cato Street. And if you didn't know about the Cato Street plot of 1820, you were in for a surprise, because it was the big news story of 1820. It's one that's fascinated me for many years. And at last, I've committed to performing this show, which I haven't written yet, at the Edinburgh Fringe in August. And it's called Cato Street 1820 at the Pleasance Theatre. And I hope it'll have a life beyond Edinburgh. If not, the main thing is for me to perform it and get it out of my system, because there's a lot to say about the Cato Street plot. and how it relates to life today. The political upheavals that we're all thoroughly enjoying, aren't we, at the moment? There are strange echoes in the politics of 200 years ago. And I'm going to explore that, and I hope it'll be a very illuminating and disturbing show. It will include a graphic description of a public execution outside Newgate Prison, now the Old Bailey, in 1820, of the Cater Street conspirators, one of the most famous executions in British history, but now largely forgotten. So come and see the show if you want to find out what happened. Look at this, look at that. I mean, it is the most beautiful design, isn't it?
Shoot that thing.
Isn't it lovely?
Shoot me.
Absolutely gorgeous. Is this even wearing khaki?
Can't act though, can it?
A khaki Dalek.
Not at the doors either.
Flotilla of Daleks floating past. They are beautiful, aren't they? They still puts a little shiver of horror down my spine. Look, he's pointing his thing at me. Oh, dreadful. Get out. They're very colourful nowadays, aren't they? They weren't in my day. They were black and white. Now we have multicoloured Daleks. Who'd have thought? I blame Noel Edmonds.